We are in Venice in the 1950s at a famous restaurant called Harry's Bar, and Giuseppe Cipriani, the owner, has just greeted one of his most esteemed guests. But that night, she had a particular demand. Little did he know that the recipe that he came up with that night would become a timeless classic and staple of the hotel restaurant industry and served to this very day throughout the world. Good evening, my aficionados of regional cuisines and restaurant classics. Tonight we are going to talk about a very special dish called carpaccio. This dish has a lot of interesting lessons to teach us and a very unique backstory. But before it was known as a delicate preparation of thinly sliced beef or fish, this red recipe was an emblem of the city of Venice and an homage to one of its most famous painters. Invented by the illustrious Giuseppe Cipriani, the carpaccio is a dish that takes us to a very special place and time during the 1950s at his legendary Venetian restaurant, Harry's Bar.
I hope you have enjoyed your stay.
Oh, we have immensely.
Hotel.
We enjoyed it extremely.
So keep you well.
Thank you.
Have a nice journey.
Thank
I hope
you
to
so
see you again
much.
next
I
year.
hope so.
So let's go back then there to Venice in the 1950s, where Giuseppe Cipriani was becoming quite well known because Harry's Bar was attracting a lot of famous celebrity guests. Since opening Harry's Bar in the 1930s, Mr. Cipriani had always put hospitality of the highest quality to the center of his ethos, and this still stands today. He was a legend and visionary of his time, and what people like Orson Welles were to cinema or Ernest Hemingway to literature, Giuseppe Cipriani was to the restaurant industry.
He made us lots of publicity, but in another way, I made him publicity because he used my name to get popular. You see?
If you ever have the chance of visiting Harry's Bar in Venice, the first thing that'll strike you is how simple the place actually is. It doesn't boast the opulence of a grand Venetian palace. There's very little decoration whatsoever. However, the waiters are extremely courteous and very efficient, and you'll certainly see a lot of very interesting characters behind the bar. His regular patron, the Countess Amalia Nanni Moncenigo, was ordered by her doctor that she could not eat cooked meat. Why exactly that is, we will never know. But what matters is that while today's restaurants would probably just propose something else on the menu, this lazy solution was not in the modus operandi of our famous restaurateur. That night, he would take the time, effort, and creativity to come up with a dish that would not only comply with the dietary restrictions of his guests, but delight and impress her appetite for meat. What inspired Cipriani that evening we'll probably also never know, but it's possible that he may have recalled a dish he may have had once in the Piemonte area called carne cruda all'albese from the Langhe, where thinly sliced pieces of raw beef are seasoned with olive oil, lemon juice, salt and pepper, and, if you're lucky and in season, white truffles. In any case, constraints breed innovation, and that's what happened that night. Cipriani took the freshest piece of beef that he could find and sliced it ever so thin, delicately laying the pieces on a circular plate to make a beautiful red canvas, on which he would then drizzle what would become known as the universal sauce in the trademark Kandinsky-style pattern. Now, the way the Countess reacted to the dish is also up for historical debate, but I have a hunch she may have recommended to her friends. What was probably word of mouth became a new legendary addition to the menu. All that was missing was a name. According to the legend put forth by the Ciprianis, the name came to Giuseppe from an art exhibition dedicated to the famous Venetian Renaissance painter called Vittore Carpaccio, which took place at the Doge's palace at the time. The colors of his dish reminded Cipriani of Carpaccio's use of brightly colored, saturated tones of red. But if you do a little digging, something doesn't quite add up. You see, the actual exhibition that took place at the Doge's Palace in honor of Vittore Carpaccio took place in 1963, and the evening I just described was sometime in the 1950s. What I think is most likely, though, of course, is that Cipriani already knew about Vittore Carpaccio before this exhibition. In fact, you don't have to go very far away from Harry's Bar. If you cross the Grand Canal across the Accademia Bridge, you'll get to the Galleria dell'Accademia, where they have many works by Vittore Carpaccio on permanent display. Keeping that in mind, we're now going to prepare our classic Carpaccio in two different ways. The first is going to be Carpaccio Cipriani, the one I just described. The second was popularized in the 1980s and is most popular all over the world, although you can also find it on the menu at Harry's Bar. That is Carpaccio with Rucola and Parmigiano. So, as we said already, it's a simple recipe that requires finesse, precision, and freshness. According to tradition, the best carpaccio is made with beef sirloin that you're gonna trim. Get all the fat off of all the sides so you get a nice, beautiful red cylinder. If you ask your butcher, he can trim it for you. I've asked my butcher. She didn't want to cut into slices. You're gonna cut it yourself, because even if you get your butcher to cut it into slices for you, then you only have a 2-hour window to eat it before it begins to oxidize and change color, which doesn't look very appealing. And as we saw, aesthetics is a major element of this dish. One full-sized portion is about 150 grams, but keep in mind that you'll lose a lot of meat when trimming and plating, so I would account for about 30% loss. I would buy about 200 grams of meat per person. Now you're gonna get to the meat, and this is the tricky part. So as we said, you've trimmed every bit of fat and gristle from the sirloin, leaving that small cylinder of tender, lean meat. Most online recipes tell you to put the meat in the freezer, making it easier to slice. But Cipriani insisted against it, and since we're following his recipe, we'll not be putting any of this meat in the freezer. Then, using a long-bladed, razor-sharp knife, slice the meat paper thin and arrange the slices on individual plates, covering the surface completely like the red canvases they're supposed to be. This universal sauce is the focal point of the dish, so focus on that. Get 200 grams of mayonnaise, with about 1 to 2 teaspoons of Worcester sauce, 1 teaspoon fresh lemon juice. Then you're gonna add the milk. Add just enough so it just barely coats the back of a dry wooden spoon. Salt and freshly ground white pepper. You're gonna blend all those ingredients with a whisk. Taste and adjust to seasoning as you prefer, with more Worcester sauce or lemon juice as you see fit. Then you're gonna add your universal sauce to a piping bag and keep it ready in the fridge. Get your piping bag ready and take one moment to look at a piece of art by Wassily Kandinsky, and then get to work. Use your inspiration to make these Kandinsky-style patterns in 2 angles on the plate, and serve immediately. There you go. Another version that I mentioned that got very popular in the 1980s is the one with Rucola and Parmigiano. I really like this version too, because it's leaner and it's also very high in protein because of the added Parmigiano. So here's how you do it. You're gonna whisk some extra virgin olive oil with some lemon juice and salt. Drizzle that slightly on the meat, leaving some in the bowl. In that bowl, you're then gonna throw in some rucola and mix the remaining sauce with the rucola and put it in the center of the plate in a little mound. Then add generous pieces of shaved Parmigiano, pepper, and if you like, some pine nuts, capers, or tagache olives would work very well as well. As your guests wait, as you prepare, I recommend making them a Bellini cocktail, because that was also invented by Cipriani at Harry's Bar. if you go, you sit at the bar, you get a Bellini cocktail, and when they assign you to your table, you sit down and you order the Carpaccio and pair it with wine. Don't pair the Bellini with the Carpaccio. I recommend in any case to pairing this with a beautiful Amarone della Valpolicella. I'm pairing a luxurious red Venetian dish with a luxurious red Venetian wine from the Veneto. Maybe I'm overdoing it because it's a very powerful dark red with rich aromas of stewed fruits, even tobacco. Some people like to say tar. Very powerful dark wine, which may maybe overpower the meat. I think it'll go very well together. If you have a better wine pairing suggestion, let me know in the comments below. I really like this dish because it brings us back to a time when restaurants just operated differently. It also serves us valuable lessons on flexibility and adapting to our guests' needs. We are talking about a dish that inspired itself from an old rustic traditional dish from another region and bringing it back to the forefront with a modern twist. It's incorporating elements of fine arts with artistic creativity and also puts the raw ingredient to the forefront. I really hope you enjoyed this video and are going to make it. Let me know in the comments below how your carpaccio turned out. And if you're interested in learning more about other iconic Venetian dishes and where to find them in Venice, I made a video exactly about that. That being said, if you're interested in these pearls of regional cuisines and restaurant classics, then I recommend subscribing to this channel, and I'll see you on the next trip. Arrivederci.
If you come in here and you have a woman with you, I can do with you what I want. If I know that the woman is interested, I can offer you caviar, I can offer you French champagne, instead Italian champagne, and you can say no.